you ready?
Hello and welcome to another EWB. It's Craftsdwarf here with Nunmanji, our first EWB with just the two of us. Hello, Nunmanji.
Hello, Craftsdwarf. I'm looking forward to everybody's favorite Weeb Club feature. You know, gets all the views. People love it.
Yeah.
Just love toxicity.
Yeah. Right? Though that said, this isn't the one of the worst videos we've talked about. Like, it does some things that maybe go, but it's not like... It's not
It's not like straight up disrespectful and like shitty to creators, really.
Right. Well, because it is like, you know, and I do think it is harder for a positive video to do that, but it's not impossible.
I mean, yeah, a lot of people like to linchpin their points by putting something down, but like, you know, he does kind of like put shonen down kind of sort of in this video, but it's not like any specific series. And he's not like he's definitely not trying to be mean about it.
Right, but some of the things he says are definitely not great.
Yeah. I would definitely say it's like a pretty typical kind of ignorance towards shonen, and like so it's not like angry. It's not something to get angry at, but it's just like kind of like this again, I guess.
No, it's funny that you even phrase it that way, because I was even thinking about that while watching the video, because he kind of brings up, generic shonen a lot. And it's like, I don't know, I just find that the word generic tends to just be a really, like, unhelpful word.
I agree.
But I can say that this review is pretty generic, and that's kind of sad. Like, it's so... like typical, and it's like yep, he's doing the thing, yep, there it is. Like, I just felt like I've seen this review before, even though I haven't. Like, it was that kind of thing, and I've never gotten that from actually reading a shonen manga, funnily enough. Even something like Rave, where, or I feel like, it's very amateur. Mashima was pretty young when he wrote it. For just as a random example, right? So and there's me being mean and toxic for I don't know, the video. I hope it doesn't get worse than that. But I just like had that feeling, and it's like, is that too mean to say? But it's like, he's calling a genre I happen to like generic, so why not? Anyway,
I mean, the thing I'll say is, like, what we say about this video isn't like necessarily reflective of his whole content, because I'm sure both of us haven't really like watched a bunch of glass reflection videos, so it's just like we're not taking him reviews, down.
So yeah, right? No, yeah, like it's just like, here's this one video that we watched. I mean, that's the thing I will say is, like, with a lot of the EWBs, the problems in the one video tends to be like reflective of their whole content. But I haven't seen a lot of Akata videos, so I don't know that for sure. But just being transparent, like, is this no, I feel like I must have at least watched one of his other videos, but also I can't think of another one that I would have watched.
I've probably seen like two maybe, but like I don't really remember them, so it's whatever.
But anyway, I'm ready to start the video.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
I really do love it when the title of an anime is short, sweet, and tells you exactly what you are in for. Hey, maybe the show is about a guy called Jojo who goes on a bizarre adventure. That's what the title says. This anime is called Goblin Slayer. I wonder what it's about. Perhaps a guy who goes around slaying things? What does he slay? Why not goblins? Every once in a while, you're gonna get something like Hunter x Hunter, where you first have to decipher the title in order for it to make sense. Like, is it Hunter Hunter? Hunter x Hunter? Is it about a hunter who hunts hunters? Let's figure that one out over time. Though really, as long as we don't get the extremely long, obnoxious light novel titles, I'm good. Otherwise, for the show that we're going to be looking at today, it might be called, I Can't Believe My Sister Turned Into a Demon, and I Don't Want to Slay Her, or something. Demon Slayer is a much better title. It is short, sweet, and while you might think it wraps up the entire show's narrative in a nice little bow so that it's easy to explain, it's actually a bit more complicated than that.
Okay, so like
Yeah.
right there, I already kind of have, you know, a little bit of problems with how he's presenting things because, you know, for one, he's obviously kind of shitting on light novels for no real reason.
Right. Which, you know, I'm sure, like, Pause and Select, or Joe on his side channel, he did these great little, like, skits where he's kind of, like, talking about why light novels are titled the way he does, but he does it in, like, a funny way. Like, marketability. You know, hey, like, you read the title, you know exactly what the series is about, right? Like, that's not a bad thing. It's literally doing the same thing that he's saying, it's just in a longer way, right? And you know, like, there's a reason it's like that, and it's just the way he's kind of dismissive about it is kind of not, it's kind of not a fan.
And like, yeah, like, with light novel titles, I would say it actually fits a lot of series to have such long titles because, like, some of them are very comedic. So, like, you know, Konosuba, like, Konosubarashi, whatever the heck, God's Wonderful World or whatever. It's like kind of like an ironic kind of sort of title in a way. Like, and I would say that indicates a lot about the series for choosing such a long title to represent itself. So, like, I wouldn't say that's, like, a bad thing. And also, like,
go
on. With his point about, you know, Demon Slayer kind of simple to the point, you kind of get it. I wouldn't say any title can really achieve that, actually. Like, Demon Slayer could come off and, like having a title like Demon Slayer, I wouldn't think of, like, a kind protagonist like Tanjiro from hearing Demon Slayer. Like, that's not what I would define that as. So already there's kind of like this disconnect between what he's saying here. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna observe that it's not even like specifically a light novel thing. Because I just, you know, thought, hey, Watamote, or, you know, it's not my fault I'm not popular. That sounds like a light novel title, but it's an original manga. So, like, that's it's not. So it's just, you know, like, even though I understand, like, yeah, it's commonly associated with, like, light novels that are adapted to anime, right? Like, it's still not a unique thing. So it's just like, you know, like, it's focusing way too specifically on that just side of, you know, the medium, right? I don't know. Like, Helen's already get a bad enough rep as it is, and this is just kind of like, I mean, admittedly the video is 2 years old, but it's still kind of feeding that, you know, same mindset, I think. But, you know, but it's just like, it's a really common thing, which again goes back to my original thing of just like, you know, it's kind of a generic review, right? Where it's just like, oh, yep, common joke, with the common, you know, punching bag. So it's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And I guess a minor thing, but he's talking about, like, oh, Hunter x Hunter is kind of weird, but it's like, I feel like you watch one episode and, oh, gone. He wants to become a hunter so he can find his dad, who is a hunter. He is, in fact, a hunter. Like, they just need one episode. You don't need a lot. That's not a lot of time. Like, come on.
I would also say about the Hunter x Hunter title thing, you know, this is very minor. I don't really mind. I used to say Hunter x Hunter. Sometimes I still do because that's how I used to say it. But, like, it is pretty obvious that it's not supposed to be an X because of, like, when you watch 2011, like, the font, like, the main font for the logo will have Hunter x Hunter really big, and then the X is, like, really small between it. So it's kind of clearly supposed to just be, like, a connecting kind of thing, connecting the two words, and not, like, X. I don't know. It's pretty obvious
sure
once you think about it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm watching the 99 version right now, and at the end of every episode, they do, like, a next episode preview, and they usually just say Hunter x Hunter, just right. They just say the title, right, as it's supposed to be said. I would, you know, so it's like if you, oh yeah, listen to that, and now you got the pronunciation. And of course, he had to make a hiatus joke, and it's like,
oh yeah, that was
okay,
kind of L.
Sure, you know.
I mean, I'll excuse it because it's like,
I've done it
2
before.
years ago, before the
Twice.
really big thing happened. Like, after the big thing, it'd be kind of like really bad if he did that, but you know,
yeah, right. No, and like I've done it in both of my Hunter x Hunter videos, so it's like I can't even fault it too much. But you know, it's not something I'm going to do again. So you know, we learn from past mistakes, and I don't know if he's gonna yeah, I don't know if he'll learn from that or if he's just gonna stop, but whatever. Anyway,
This video was brought to you by Crunchyroll and viewers like you. Thank you. Demon Slayer is a new anime from the talented folks over at Studio Ufotable. It does a lot of things right, but most of these are not necessarily obvious. When we talk about shonen anime, there are certain characteristics, popular tropes, and tried and true narrative formulas that get used and reused ad nauseum. Each time with the story trying to find a new angle from which to pull in a fresh audience. But here with Demon Slayer, I can't rightfully say that there are many things narratively that the series does differently. A lot of the story as written is painfully shonen, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you play your cards right, a well-written story can invoke the same feelings as similar narratives without coming off as a carbon copy or a stolen plotline. You can have episodes with characters training to become stronger, only to fight in a competition in an enclosed area to prove their worth, and then join some organization of similarly skilled fighters without being called a ripoff to either My Hero Academia, Hunter x Hunter, or the slew of shows in the genre that came before them. Even if all of these episodes follow the same narrative beats, we don't tire of them. There are enough new elements to the stories with just the characters alone to push your interest through to the end. This is a fine line that Demon Slayer rides very well.
Okay, so like right there, he's doing that thing that a lot of people who talk about shonen like to do, where they kind of pretend they really know more about how shonen work than they really actually know. Like, I would be willing to bet most of these people can't actually like define like what really is the shonen formula, quote unquote. And
if they try, we could very easily go like, well, what about these other examples that contradict what you're saying, right?
Yeah. And like, you know, and it's already kind of a ruining your credibility when, like, for me at least, when you say when you group all shonen together, because like obviously shonen's a lot broader than like battle series, so by using the word shonen, you are including like a whole bunch of shit that like isn't even an action series.
Right, like in the context of this video, I do he's clearly using it as a shorthand for battle shonen, which it is pretty reductive. I do at least understand what he's trying to say, which even if like I don't agree with that specific like wording, because you know there's more to the genre to the demographic than just battle series, right? So right.
See, like, I get what he's trying to say, but I do think either way, it does show, like, a gap in his knowledge, like, just by that alone. And then, like, with, like, like, even if we're gonna, you know, we'll narrow it down to battle shonen, I honestly wouldn't say there's, like, a very clear, consistent formula across, like, battle shonen as a whole. Like, I would say the closest you could take something like that is like this specific era of Shonen Jump might have like these consistent trends, but like even when you look at another magazine like Shonen Sunday, at least from the stuff that I've read or seen from Shonen Sunday, I wouldn't even like compare, like even though they're both have battle series, I still think they're pretty different. And most people when they talk about like battle shonen, they're talking about Jump series and what Jump audiences are looking for and what's like currently in with Jump. So like even when we like give them the credit of battle shonen, there's just so many like things outside of the scope of what people are mentioning with different magazines. Like I only mentioned 2 just now, but like, you know, there's 4 major ones and a lot of like smaller magazines out there.
Yeah,
so
there's monthly publications, there's a bunch of other weekly publications, there's, you know, the big 4, Jump, Sunday, Weekly, and Champion, and it's like, how small are you going to like shove these series, like as the whole you're going to shove these series into, right? And like, what was this one example? Oh, shonen are like a series where they collect a bunch of strong guys and have them like what like
Yeah.
I never even thought, like, how does Kimetsu even remotely like Hunter exams? Okay, I can kind of get it. MHA starts with like an exam thing to weed out the students for the school. Sure, I guess. Like, Naruto would have made sense to bring up for the tuning exams. After that, I'm like again, he's saying this as this very common shonen thing, and I'm like struggling to think of more examples, because here's a bunch of, like, I mean, okay, like because those were all relatively early in the story, I guess. But, you know, so, because if we talk about later in the story, there's the Grand Magic Games and Fairy Tail, or the Dressrosa, the Colosseum thing. But, like, Dragon Quest doesn't do it. Dragon Dai's Great Adventure, airing right now. Karakuri Circus was a series I was thinking about, because it got an anime adaptation a couple years ago, and it was running in its magazine. I think it was...
I think it's Sunday. I feel like it's Sunday.
Yeah, I can't remember. Oh no, I think it is Sunday. You're right. Yeah. And because it started in 1996, so like right before the big three were doing their thing, and it's not really similar to them. You know, right?
JoJo doesn't have like a tournament thing.
Like
and some of the JoJo series don't even have like training arcs in them. So
right, and like. Because, yeah, people do complain about... But, like, even the similarities people do complain about are still way more specific than that. Like, I've obviously heard the tuning exams is a ripoff of the Hunter exam thing. And when I think about why, because I've been watching Hunter x Hunter and I'm about to get the badge portion, I'm like, wait a minute, yeah, that's right. People think this is remotely similar to the Heaven and Earth scroll thing in the Forest of Death. Like, oh, you're in a place and you have to get something from another team. And it's like... But they're so completely different from each other. Like, what these offer to the individual narratives, the games are still... Like, basically they only have the vague similarity of in place and have to get something from another competitor, basically. But it's like, okay, in Naruto it's team focused, and they have to get one scroll that matches theirs. But in Hunter x Hunter, they have two options. They can get either 3 badges, or they can get the one specific badge they need. Or they can even get rid of their badge. Hisoka didn't even keep his badge. He gave it to Gon, and he got the badge he needed, and then 3 other badges because he's just that good, right?
Yeah, and like even the groups and the characters in like Naruto or Hunter x Hunter within those exams, you know, the teams in Naruto already knew each other, so it was kind of... It's already very different from Gon just meeting these people for the first time and, you know, establishing connections that way.
Right, and the teams in Naruto, the Naruto example, they like, you know, you go into the exam as a team and you're supposed to pass as a team, where in Hunter x Hunter, the team's more formed organically based on the friendships or whether the teamwork, you know, like conflicting goals and the like, you know, what made sense to work together at the time. Right, like, never mind how, just again, how they factor differently into their ongoing narratives, where, you know, want to know what doesn't happen in Hunter x Hunter? A major antagonist breaks into the fucking exam and fucks over the main characters, right? Like, it doesn't even offer the same thing narratively.
Like, like, that's a really good point, too, because, like, you know, people will they usually will group in Naruto with, like, the standard quote-unquote tournaments of shonen, of, like, battle shonen series, but, like, you know, with that interruption, that's pretty major, like,
yeah, and that's
even when Dragon Ball,
go on.
Even when like Piccolo and Dragon Ball was, you know, gonna destroy the world, they still did the tournament.
No, that's,
you know, in the
I've
Boo arc, they
that.
do, you know, they do kind of make it not matter, but like it's still kind of very different in Naruto, I would say.
Well, even in the Boo arc, it still proceeds to a natural conclusion. It just loses most of its fighters. They all just leave. But they still Satan still becomes the winner, right? And I was actually thinking about that, how Naruto does sort of mark this interesting turning point in Shonen Jump, where like a lot of these tournaments, even if serious stuff happens, like Kinnikuman, the tournament still plays out regardless of the stakes at play. Where you have these like structured conflicts that like no matter what happens, they play themselves out. Where I feel like after Naruto, like with the difference with the tuning exams is that here's the structured conflict that completely breaks down when it gets serious. And like that didn't Hunter x Hunter, that didn't happen. It just plays out to its natural conclusion, where the tuning exam, it breaks down. And then you can see that a lot of instances afterwards. Like I was thinking about how like Mashal very recently sort of had its own tuning exam-esque thing that broke down when the antagonists invaded. Toriko had something like that. Like, I feel like, you know, obviously I'm sure there's way more examples that I'm not considering, but it's like, you know, it's I feel like that's notable that Naruto again seems to have marked this turning point in how these tournament things are, play out. And so even then, when you're using and that's an example I'm bringing in because I never even considered Kimetsu. Like, I don't remember these collection of strong characters, and I'm like, okay, I guess I remember that happening, but I never associated with MHA or Hunter x Hunter.
Yeah, like the collection of strong characters. I could say that about Percy Jackson. Like there's just what?
It's such a broad comparison that it's is this a helpful I guess I can kind of understand the tuning exams on Hunter exam. They're both exams, and right, even if at the end of the day they're still majorly different, but. At this point, with this example, he's trying to show how similar they are, but I'm just like, what are you talking about? And I guess a more minor thing is that's the way he says painfully shonen, he's just doing the thing where it's the normal is generic and bad, even though he's not very good at showing examples of the generic and bad. Never mind that again, generic isn't. I rarely find it a very helpful descriptor in the first place.
I could not say I could not pick out one series and say this is the generic shonen. Even series that everyone doesn't like, well, most people don't, well, not most people, but a lot of people don't like Seven Deadly Sins. I'm not saying that it's bad. I don't know if I don't know I haven't experienced it in a while, so I'm not really making any statements on that. But I've seen it, and I even if we want to say that it's not very good, I would not say other battle shonen series are like that. I can't think of a series I think is similar to it. There's just a lot of like Fairy Tail. I can't really think of something I would say is like Fairy Tail. I guess other than Hiro Mashima works, but that
right, well,
the same guy.
Wait, Rave and Fairy Tail and Eden Zero have some similarities? Interesting. I wonder why that is. Right, and yeah, and even the similarities I can say, there's still so many otherwise major differences. That it doesn't even matter. Even in my first Fairy Tail tirade video, I'm like, oh, isn't Fairy Tail kind of like One Piece? And I was kind of addressing that thing in a bad way by being, well, One Piece is good actually, so how can they be alike? But later I did even realize that I thought, because when it first was announced, it's it's like Bleach Piece, because some of these character designs kind of look like One Piece characters and or Bleach characters. And later I did realize it's a funny comparison because two major themes of Fairy Tail are the found family aspect and overcoming loss and grief, and One Piece has found family as a major aspect, and overcoming loss and grief is a very important thing in Bleach, right? So it's funny that people had this association immediately, and the series thematically in some ways is kind of similar to those two, but it's also again they both do they all do very individual things relative to each other. That it's just oh, that's neat that they explore those same ideas, but it's not Fairy Tail is ripping off and doing the exact same things, because it's not really like One Piece or Bleach at all.
Even with series, there's direct confirmation basically that this person decided to lift a certain framework from another series. I still wouldn't even say they're overly similar. A series I really like called Sket Dance, in case somebody doesn't know what it is a series that takes a framework from Gintama, because the person who made Sket Dance was an assistant on Gintama, and it has that framework of it's a comedy a lot, but there's a lot more serious stuff under the surface, and kind of
right,
being able to switch on a dime to where
exactly
the comedy to the serious moments. And so you could think from hearing that, oh, they must be similar, but it's very different already that Sket Dance is not a battle series, and
right.
They're in school,
yes,
and the fights are replaced with very dramatic things.
Right, just the fact that the genres are different, whereas Sket Dance is a school slice of comedy thing, and with Gintama, a very important part to its conflict and overall even comedy is the setting, where it's okay, it's the Edo period Japan, but instead of being invaded by Americans, it's been invaded by aliens who have settled and completely changed how that's a majorly important part to Gintama, and it's very hard to do something remote. Like, even though Get Dance, yeah, has that similarity, like, because it's also so majorly different in such fundamental ways, it's going to feel like a very different story. And Vindy's even talked about how even, like, the humor is very different, even though they are both comedies, right? So, right. So, like, and I guess to use, to bring up some other examples of influence just from, that I know of is, Zip Man was a short-lived jump manga that was, the guy who did it was a former assistant to both Eiichiro Oda and Horikoshi. And it does deal in superheroes, and I do think at the end of the day, maybe with the Japanese audiences, it didn't distinguish itself enough from MHA to like find its own foothold, so to speak. But it was very much dealing MHA is more referent to Western heroes, where Zip Man was more inspired by Kamen Rider and Eastern. superheroes.
It definitely did seem
right?
That way. Yeah,
and thematically, it was doing some interesting stuff with like how it was treating like nostalgia. Towards these kind of series that you get involved with as kids, which MHA wasn't necessarily doing, at least definitely not in the way that Zip Man was. So it's like I felt it was distinct, and I was actually really into it for a time until like it hit that point where it's like, it's a certain point, and then it got canceled. It's like, oh, sad. Here's another series where the author has very much worn his influence on his sleeve and been very open about it. Jujutsu Kaisen is basically like, what if you took Hunter x Hunter and mashed it with Bleach, where like the way that they have these powers with like limitations and vows is very reminiscent of Hunter x Hunter, and just the way it's like a contemporary supernatural thing, and the way it sort of especially like layers in its like symbolism, Buddhist symbolism primarily, it very reminds me of Bleach. But Jujutsu Kaisen is still very much its own thing, even if it wears those influences on its sleeve. Like, it's not, even with these similarities, like, it's not a bad thing at all, and it works for the series in question. Right? So it's just like, I don't know.
The biggest thing I want to say about like the whole, the formula thing is like, for one, taking a framework from another work isn't like a bad thing that like people kind of, people don't outright say that it's like a bad thing, but they do talk down to the idea of doing it. And despite doing something like that, just by nature of being a literal different person, works are just naturally going to be different. And, you have to be really reductive to genuinely think a lot of series are similar. And, like, even without being, like, a great writer, I still think there's just naturally a whole culmination of different things that'll make your work different, even if it's not like, even if that different isn't like good, like it's still like going to be different. Like no one person can just like emulate what somebody else is really doing, really, especially if it's a series that didn't get canceled.
Right, like it survived for a reason. Yeah. Like, exactly, like a competitive magazine like Jump especially, where it's very ruthless with the series it cuts. The series that survive are probably going to have something going for them, I would assume. And even if I don't like Ichigo 100% is a Jump series I didn't like, but I'm not going to pretend it doesn't have, like, things going on, and there isn't a reason that people, like it, I just don't. But
one thing I do want to bring up is, like, in that interview, in like the David and Goliath interview with the two heads of Shonen Sunday and Shonen Jump,
Champion, not Jump.
Oh, Shonen Champion, sorry.
Yes.
They mention a lot of copycats of like Beastars coming in, like they consider them copycats, so they like cut them. So like even before a series gets published, they already kind of can try to weed out the series that are like actually a little too similar.
Right, like in order to get published, a series has to go through at least one editor, likely multiple times. Like apparently Oda had a difficult time getting One Piece serialized, not because his original One Piece stuff was like drafts were bad, but because like they knew he could do better, and so they had higher expectations for him, so they wanted him to do really well for his early like chapter. And it succeeded.
Yeah.
They made the best-selling manga in the world. Like, hello.
Yeah, like, I would say through this process and through these professionals, like, being really strict, I guess, on what gets in, they're probably more aware of, like, what is like different and what is like doing something different. And,
right, and they do fail because not every series makes it, right? Like even like what are some ones that are ending or likely to end soon? I Tell C.
Dolphin,
I like that from the beginning. Yeah, Dolphin I was never super huge on, but I Tell C I liked, and it's getting canceled. Kowloon Ball Parade is likely to get canned. I was really into it, and it's gonna get canceled, right? Like not every so something, even if I liked it, I'm not a viable audience because I'm not buying these Shonen Jump volumes. I'm subscribed to the service. I'm not bought, but I can't. I'm just not gonna buy a volume in Japanese for a series. Maybe this one, like my one volume will make it so that this series doesn't get canceled. Like that's not gonna happen, right?
Yes.
Right. So yeah, they fail and they learn and they eventually succeed. Like they keep trying, right? And hopefully, and yeah, it does, and it happens to make series I really like. Kimetsu no Yaiba, great series. Have you heard of it?
Oh, I haven't heard of it. Maybe I should check it out.
You should read it. Yeah, it's good. It's good. All right.
Yeah, we can get back to the video, I think.
Episode 1 opens up with the introduction of our protagonist, Tanjiro, who is off to sell charcoal in the nearby town to help support his family. As he is a friendly fellow, he tends to spend far too much time helping out as many townspeople as he can. This makes him late to arrive home, too late to stop a demon from massacring his family. Everyone is dead with the exception of his sister, who is the sole survivor, having been turned into a demon herself by the attack. Tanjiro is then forced to defend his newly demonized sister from a nearby demon slayer who was just following the trail of blood to their house. He probably should have killed both of them, but then we would have no story. So instead, he sees great promise in our young protagonist and a strange aura of sorts from his sister. Because of this, he decides to not kill either of them and instead sends Tanjiro off to train and become a demon slayer himself.
Okay. So right there, I would say he, kind of doesn't even understand the series he's praising in a sense. Like he's just being really like, I don't know, he's kind of down, like he's just kind of stating things in a certain way to kind of make kind of a joke out of it, when it's like very clear what he sees in Tanjiro and Nezuko, to the point where like what he's saying doesn't make any sense, because like Nezuko is a demon he's never seen before that isn't eating Tanjiro when she's hurt. Demons, they get energy and like strength from eating people, but she's still not eating Tanjiro, and she's like showing this little glimmer of humanity despite being a demon. So he obviously sees that. Tanjiro, they explain it. They explain the moment in the series where he's like, he did a really rash thing that almost got the upper hand on a profession, like a
one of the pillars.
Tomiki is
right?
a pillar, yeah. Like,
and here's this complete novice, like actually as showing some promise by like doing something actually meaningful in that their little brief exchange, right? Where it's like, yeah.
And like, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna keep going. Where it's like, and he says, "Oh, he sees that he's the main character," and it's like, I mean, like, okay, I guess, because you can read it that way, but it's like that's just kind of reductive of what's actually happening. Like it feels like the kind of point you make where it's like you've seen it. Like Arcada's seen a lot and watched a lot of shit, right? Like he's been doing this for years, right?
Yeah.
So it's like he understands, like, there's writing things going on there, so he's kind of peeling back the wallpaper, so to speak, seeing how the sausages. But I imagine he hasn't actually like written stories a lot, or and it's like I do think doing writing and looking at reading they're different, and so I just wonder if maybe like he would be more of a, like, instead of just like he's like seeing the Matrix code and but he's like talking about the Matrix code instead of like, okay, but why is it like that? Right? Like, why? Because the reasons that he notices about Tanjiro and Nezuko and why they're notable, those would likely be thematically important reasons, and notable to why the story is the way it is. Why are these characters the way they are? Instead of just like, well, Tanjiro is the main character. Okay, why is he the main character of this story? Right?
Yeah.
In fact, didn't this other cool character just come in who he's cool. Why is he not the main character? Tanjiro is, right? So, that's a question that would be answered by how the series goes, right?
And like Arcana also says like, oh, he should have killed both of them. But like, even if you didn't see like promise in Tanjiro, he wasn't gonna kill Tanjiro. Like,
he's a human,
you
right?
kind of weren't paying attention there. And like the series in general, like with Tomokiya specifically, it is like, I would say in that moment it establishes that like he does in a very underlying way kind of has a little bit of a similar sense of compassion that Tanjiro does, to where like, he did notice Tanjiro's situation and what he must be feeling, and he even wants to encourage Tanjiro to act and like not to just cry and like despair
or
and
fall to his circumstances, which is major contrast between the good guys and the not so good guys. But anyway,
and like one thing I find particularly interesting is like Tomokiya, he'll use like it's explained that he kind of is using anger as like a drive and like really like towards demons, and kind of misses the point that the series goes into later. And it kind of like there's more stuff between the two characters later on, even past what the anime adapts, that like I get a lot out of where like Tanjiro, he uses kindness, whereas like Tomokiya can't really he isn't like that's where their difference lies, and there's a lot of like things between the two because of that. What I'm trying to say is like, there's obviously more going on here than him trying to make it look like the writing is being arbitrary, I guess.
And though I will say, like later on in the video, he does is at least aware of like, oh well, I haven't read the manga, so he at least tries to be a bit more aware of what he doesn't know. But
I mean, right in that moment, I still kind of felt at least some of what he was saying is like, then why say it? But we'll get to it.
Anyway,
Tanjiro as a character is a bit beyond your stale shonen protagonist. While he trains long and hard for the skills and abilities to become a demon slayer, there are particular portions of his humanity that he refuses to part with. Early on, his mentors look at this aspect of him and call him weak, as they should if their desire is to train him into a deadly warrior, but he eventually becomes a skilled killer, while at the same time showing massive amounts of sympathy for the demons that he is forced to slay. He's not going on a killing spree just to satisfy some kind of revenge plot against the demon that killed his parents, nor something as blandly simple as to become the strongest, whatever that could mean. He's motivated by his desire to protect his sister and to eventually find a way to cure her, if such a thing is even possible. As such, since his desire is to restore his sister's humanity, it'll do him no favors to forego his own humanity. The optimism displayed in his character is probably one of the things that I would point to as being unique enough from other shows and other shonen protagonists. There's a moment in episode 7 specifically when a side character, in an emotional rage, questions Tanjiro on how he could possibly know about the pain of loss that he is feeling. Then, with a kind and polite smile, Tanjiro just shuts him down. He doesn't argue with him or correct him, and he doesn't turn into a contest of who has the more depressing backstory. While other shonen protagonists can smile through the pain for a variety of reasons, Tanjiro's smile has a different kind of hurt and pain behind it. It's not something that ever consumes him like it might others.
You want to go first?
Yes. Okay, see, it's everything you said about just Tanjiro there was good. Tanjiro is a kind boy. Like, it he's good. It works for what the series is doing. Everything he said about other shonen protagonists, of which he gave 0 examples, so we don't know who he's thinking of as he's writing this. Because maybe if he gave an example, I could be like, okay, I understand why you use that character, but I don't know if, like, that character is emblematic of all the series that you're referring to, which is, you know, the whole genre, so to speak. Right?
I mean, I am glad that he didn't like bring up anyone specifically, because, you know, that would have been like mauled inducing, I guess. But like,
true. Well, I mean, my thing with that
I
is
also
that,
think
like,
it is hard to like really hit the nail on the head in terms of like just making him like look entirely wrong if he doesn't actually say which character he's talking about.
That's kind of why I think it's almost, I won't say manipulative, because that implies like a kind of like deliberacy that I don't think is there, but it's definitely like, it's leaning on the expected audience agreement that to what he's already saying, where like, I'm like, okay, where I want you to like go, okay, if you have this observation, like, oh, lots of shonen protagonists, you know, maybe they don't do this, or they do this. Like, okay, what's the commonality that you're seeing, and why are you seeing it like that? Where by not going into that, he's like reducing possibility for a discussion there, because like the scene he talks about with Tanjiro, and like, oh, you don't understand pain and loss, and how he reacts to that. I couldn't help but think about Naruto, and how that's arguably like even more important. Like the scene he gets with that, the character who's saying that is Sasuke. And Naruto hasn't, at that point in the story, in the Sasuke, at the end of the Sasuke retrieval arc, experienced loss in that way. He's never had anyone to lose. That's why. And he's fighting with Sasuke to avoid losing someone he does care about. And that's also like his kind of failure. Like, and he has to, you know, like he's got a character arc going on there, and and yeah, he's a character who like smiles off like the pain of loneliness, and he smiles to cover that up, and was like, that's like, so there's a character who's kind of similar in some ways. I don't think they're majorly similar, but it's like and yeah, Naruto's obviously not necessarily, like, especially at the start, isn't necessarily kind in the same way Tanjiro is, but it's like they're different characters. But I don't know, it's just like and he's bringing us up like vengeance and being the strongest, and I'm just like,
yeah, the being the strongest thing made me think he's talking about Dragon Ball.
Which isn't even what Goku wants to do, but okay.
Yeah, he wants people to be stronger than him. He wants to keep finding people stronger than him so he can keep improving, and he wants to reach get better and be happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, he wants to hit his limit and do the best that he can. He doesn't want to be the strongest. Like, you literally see this in the Cell arc, where he goes, okay, I've hit my limit. I can't beat Cell. He's completely okay with that, because he knows that Gohan can surpass what he can do,
Yes.
He's fine with Gohan being stronger than him. Like, he's okay with that. Like, he doesn't want to be the strongest.
The most interesting thing about Dragon Ball that people don't talk about, because they only look at it from a Z lens, or like misunderstand that portion of the story, is that the portion that people call Z, which it's all one story, but like in the manga there is like kind of a shift in focus, like a clear thing that Toriyama is shifting focus, and like in that shift in focus, I do think the other part of the series is very much about like Goku in a lot of ways meeting his match very often, to where he's not just beating people by himself, and he's not like usually stronger or can pass them very easily. Like Z, he really is like struggling to keep up, and like the Cell arc really is the culmination of that, where he really does need a successor, because he's reaching
not gonna be
his
on the
limit
top forever, right?
Yeah. And his time is passing, and it's kind of like we saw that idea before in Dragon Ball, early Dragon Ball, where like there will always be someone stronger than you. Roshi had to step down and accept the new generation was about to like surpass him. So like with Goku in Z, there's like this slow like with Raditz and the Saiyans, he didn't really do that by himself. He needed a lot of help, and they barely scratched by. Frieza, that arc you can like kind of say he beat Frieza by himself. He didn't technically beat Frieza by himself, but you can take that. But in like Android Saga and Cell, he has the heart disease.
And he hits his limit, as we said earlier.
Yeah, and like the whole point of the Boo arc is like kind of this, like, you know, before Super came along, it was kind of this like finale and send off to Goku, to where like you know, in the Cell arc, Goku realized he needed a successor, but he didn't understand Gohan, and even in Boo arc, he wasn't really understanding Goten. So like he was so like, he accepted he wasn't the strongest, but he still didn't understand who should be his successor, and kind of he had problems passing the torch. So the Boo arc, they have to beat Boo for this final time without like having a successor, and just Goku and Vegeta as kind of this the last embers, I guess, of the previous generation, kind of taking care of this for the last time. But like the series ends with Goku having Oob, and that's when he finally has his successor to keep the Earth safe.
One who can surpass the failures that Gohan and Goten and Trunks had. Right.
I wouldn't even call it failures, really. It was just like, you know, I mean, obviously Goku, you know, forcing them onto something they didn't really want to do and weren't suited for.
Yeah,
so like fair. Right there's just like a lot of nuance with Dragon Ball that people kind of miss and kind of don't understand with that whole to be the strongest thing. And so like, you know, that contributes a lot to this idea of people thinking there's a generic shonen because they don't really understand what the character's true motivations are, and they're just like trying to paint too broad of a picture. And like, you know, he says what was the other thing he said aside from the strongest thing that a lot of protagonists vengeance? Yeah, with vengeance in like shonen series, I mean, like,
I'm struggling to think of any examples, right? Like, I can think of Lost being a major formative thing, and like, but even then, I struggle to think of like like, I don't know.
Like, I mean, Inuyasha, I guess they all kind of. I mean, it's not the main focus at all, but I guess it is there. But like, I don't know. Like with the vengeance thing, he was kind of trying to paint it as like, you know, they're angry and kind of like he was painting it as what the opposite of Kimetsu does, but most series don't ever do that true opposite. Like, it always is something in a lot of battle shonen where they kind of get over it in some kind of way.
I'm struggling to think of any shonen protagonists who are like particularly vengeful. Right, like, I mean, Sasuke, but when he's being vengeful, he's literally the antagonist.
Yeah, like he's not even the main character. So like, you know, I don't know, it's weird.
Like, that's
There's
like
some other things
like,
he said,
and like, it's not like, and a lot of the characters again don't have this loss. Like Luffy is a good example because, you know, we get his flashback. He lost one of his brothers, and that did inform his worldview of like he wants to be the most free. Saba was killed because the world didn't allow him freedom, right? So it makes sense, like, that's how that worldview influenced him, but he's not vengeful towards the world for that, right? Ichigo experienced loss, who you know, and I guess vengeance is a thing with him, but it's also like not like all the characters in Bleach who are consumed by their vengeance, like they die, and Ichigo is literally saved from that by Orihime. Right? So it's like, it's not a positive thing that Ichigo does have this vengeful thing towards the final antagonist of the series, because Orihime saves him so that he doesn't destroy himself through his desire for vengeance. Now I'm like, okay, who else is even close? Like, I guess none of the JoJo protagonists were particularly vengeful regarding, like, was Jotaro vengeful regarding Jonathan to Dio? I don't think so. Dio did a bunch of, I mean, maybe with his mom, I guess.
I would say like, there's a little bit of a thing, but not really.
Dio's enough of a piece of, like, Jotaro killed enough people on the way there that it's like, even if Dio hadn't done anything to him personally, like, he's such a bad person that it's like, you know, yeah, I'm like, right, like, he doesn't need it. That's the thing that I just realized, just because Dio's enough of a piece of shit, that he doesn't even need the vengeance aspect, because he did enough, right? So, And
there's like two more things that I like want to mention. Like, one, to go back to the strongest thing real quick. Like, even if there was a goal, like a goal that was truly to be the strongest, which, you know, there's series where that's kind of, I could say, the goal. I would still say even under that nuance of like to be the strongest, there's a variety of reasons someone could want to be the strongest, and there's a variety of ways that could turn out. Like,
and usually it's incidental, which is what I was going to say, where like with One Piece, Luffy basically has to become the strongest person to become the Pirate King, but he doesn't actually want to be the strongest person. He just wants to be the most free. He sees the Pirate King as the person being the most free, and he needs to be very strong to become Pirate King. So it's just like, it's more like, okay, because of this, I need to do this kind of thing. Naruto, he wants to become Hokage. He wants to lead the Leaf Village. He wants to be recognized. You know, and in order to do that, he needs to be a good ninja, which means being strong, right? Like, it's just another incidental thing. Ichigo wants to protect the people he cares about. So the best way to do that is to be strong, to have the power of a Soul Reaper so that he could fight the people who might endanger his comrades, right? And family. Like, it's all this incidental stuff. It's not necessarily like they want to be the strongest. It's more like, they have to, and Tanjiro does need to be incredibly strong to do what he needs to do, but it's not like he wants to, right?
Like, even past what the anime does, which, you know, here kind of people are missing this context very often. Tanjiro, by the end of the series, I would say he's like, I mean, like, it's not clear if he's the strongest, but like, he's obviously doing things that other people can't do, and he's being compared to this guy in the past who was like the strongest and the most, and who did all this crazy stuff to establish the Demon Slayers. So like, you know, even Kimetsu has like that incidental being the strongest, and I guess to talk about his point earlier where he made it sound like it's particular to Tanjiro with like his compassion and his like his desire to maintain his humanity. And like, you know, don't get me wrong, I do like Kimetsu. I recently reread it. You know, I liked it a lot, but I wouldn't really say that like it's different enough. I mean, it is different enough from others, but it's like not this like this thing he's painting it as, to where other protagonists aren't like that. Like, well, like, you know, one of the series that
or go on.
One of the series that Kimetsu takes inspiration from is Naruto, and with how Tanjiro treats demons, you know, it is similar to how Naruto treats his antagonists. Like, it's very similar.
Yeah, instead of humans and demons, it's humans and shinobi tools who've been reduced to objects that are in service of some ideal or goal, right? And Naruto saves them. You know, he helps them be like Zabuza even says, like, you know, I want to die in the war when he's revived with Tensei, that he wants to die human. You know, not a ninja tool, right? The example I was going to bring up was actually JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1, where you have Jonathan, who he's like sort of the ideal of humanity. He uses Hamon, which is a human, you know, it's breathing. It's tied to breathing, right? It's meant to sort of
That's another series
life.
That Kimetsu says that it took inspiration from, actually.
Right, and who's the antagonist? What's an iconic line of his? I reject my humanity.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a point to this wacky manga. Right, like, you know, so... Yeah, there you go. You know, Kimetsu, it is similar enough to these things, but it's doing things differently. But even those things that's similar to, like, you know, like One Piece doesn't really have, like, it has characters who are bad guys reducing the humanity of people as leaders, like Doflamingo, who literally turns people into toys. Not himself, but, you know, through his acts and stuff. But it's not, like, the same at all, right? You know, it's like, I don't know, it's just, yeah.
Like most I'll say it's fair enough if somebody thinks that is like, you know, maybe Tanjiro is like the most kind shonen protagonist I've seen, maybe. And like if that holds true for somebody, sure. Because like I can think of
that's a fair observation. Like at least he's up there, I would say. Like I'm struggling to think of like Deku's a good boy.
Like the people I can think of as being maybe as kind as like Tanjiro is more of like, it's more of a childish kind of innocence, kindness kind of sort of like, I think of Dai from Dragon Quest, Dai's Great Adventure. Like, yeah, he's very kind, but like I would say it's still pretty different from the kind of kindness Tanjiro has. So like I don't mind that idea of like Tanjiro, like someone thinking Tanjiro is the kindest they've seen. Though I wouldn't like go ahead and say it's okay for them to say he is like the kindest shonen protagonist, and it's like a very new thing, because like there are characters out there.
Well, and, that's like, the thing. Is, like, we're bringing up all these examples. Yeah, I feel like there's so many series that I haven't read. Because I don't, even though I have read a bunch of series, I just don't feel like I've read that many, because maybe it's because I'm just aware of just how many fucking manga there are. And how many decades worth of material. Yeah, like
people think they've read enough because they stop the history of shonen at they stop the begin, like they see the beginning as Dragon Ball, even though there's like a whole bunch of shit before that, and there's also like other magazines that people ignore a lot. So, that
like I can't say that I really like, oh yeah, I know shonen. I haven't read anything Rumiko Takahashi. I haven't read anything Adachi. I haven't read Ring ni Kakuro. Like I really need to reread Fist of the North Star. I have read Kinnikuman. I haven't read Otoko Ippike Gakita Show. Like there's so many series I haven't read that make in early shonen that like I know about that maybe a lot of people don't, and so it's just a matter of perspective in that way, I guess. I don't know.
I wanted to comment on like the training, like him talking about the training arc.
I think that's a little later.
No, I thought he did that.
No, I'm pretty sure that's later. But I'll just remember if I was wrong, then we'll talk about it. Okay. After the rest of the video, because we've been talking for half an hour and we're like, or an hour and a half, and we're
Alright, yeah, go ahead.
His sister, Nezuko, is a kawaii demon Imoto, and I know that I just described her as being a sister twice, but it's worth the extra emphasis. Her character, despite being mostly mute, is surprisingly communicative. Much of her actual communication since becoming a demon ends up being non-verbal, and it works pretty well. True, there have been several times in the story so far where they don't really know what to do with her, so they either toss her into a box or a coma for 2 years. But hopefully that was less because they don't know how to write a character like her properly, and more so only to further help bypass the training montage, or lack thereof. You see, every shonen has a training arc of some kind where our protagonist has to face some kind of basic trial that still nonetheless pushes their abilities to the max. That trial can vary from eating hair and lifting over at the beach to being stranded with your brother on an island somewhere until your master decides to come and pick you back up. What I liked about Demon Slayer, though, is that while it does have a training arc for Tanjiro, it doesn't take forever and a day. It's really just one episode, even if in universe he's at it for over a year. Now, on the one hand, it's hard to invest heavily in both his actions over that year and also the relationships that he cultivates with his teacher and the other guides who help him out, because, it's just one episode, and the lack of time doesn't help us cement these characters in our minds. But on the other hand, there's also only so much you can do with a training arc that hasn't been done before. So bypassing it in this way is quite refreshing. This is a great example of Demon Slayer holding many of the same tropes common to the genre, enough so that you can clearly see that it belongs in the genre, but not allowing that to bore its audience or to let the story become stale because of it.
Alright, so with the training arc thing, it's fine that he thinks it's good to bypass it, which that is also something I do think is good about Kimetsu, because it is aware that readers would have read have the possibility of being familiar with other battle shonen series of the same magazine, to where it feels like it can be faster about some of this beginning stuff to just establish things and kind of pull back on it later on. But like I feel like he kind of like he kind of thinks that shonen series have this like more of an issue of making like training arcs unique than there really is. Because like I you know, I would say there's similarities between training arcs that can be, you know, you can observe, but I would say like off the top of my head, like there's a lot of training arcs that mean different things and focus on different aspects. Like the QB training in Naruto, you know, he's not just straight up working out, he's like literally overcoming his inner demons and like, you know, finally like fully facing his own hatred inside of himself, because like,
right,
you know, he wasn't fully just over everything that happened in the village to him. And
even though he'd become a hero at that point, like he still had things to work through, right?
Yeah. And like, and then you can compare that to like, I guess, Dragon Ball or something with like Piccolo training Gohan. That was you know, Gohan obviously not wanting to fight and kind of having to kind of accept this kind of thing he's been forced into, and like get a little braver and kind of, you know, and as that's going on, he's bonding with Piccolo, and there's specific things about that bond to explore. So like there's different dynamics going on in training arcs to where I wouldn't really say Kimetsu needed to skip it. Like I think Kimetsu handled it well and it wasn't a bad decision, but I also don't think it like I think it's kind of limiting to say there's only so many things you can do about it. Do with it.
Yeah, no, because like my stance on not even just training but general character improvement is, you'll notice a lot of times it's very much tied to character growth, right?
Yes.
And you can do that in a battle, or you can do that through a training arc, right? Like I think Yu Yu Hakusho, Genkai even says that Yusuke is the kind of person who grows more through experience than he does through training. And so like a lot of the times he gets stronger is during battle, right? You know, so you can do it both ways. Like One Piece is a series where it really doesn't, like Zoro's always working out. There was the 2-year time skip, but when the characters gain increases in strength, you know, it's tied to character moments, but it's not really we don't see the training because we don't need to, right?
Yeah, it's only seen in like the anime when it adds that type of stuff.
Right, yeah, that I was thinking, because he even says like, oh, training takes a time and a half, and I'm like,
I feel like that's mostly because of shonen anime in the past having really shitty pacing and not the actual source material.
Exactly.
Taking
that's
forever.
what I was thinking of, because like I'm reading Dragon Ball, I don't think any of the training is like explicitly long, but in the anime I could see why, like, they're gonna do, like, they added scenes in the hyperbolic time timber in the Cell arc when or they gave a whole episode with when Krillin and the gang were training for the Saiyans, and with Kami and Popo, they added like episodes there with them doing stuff, when in the manga it's just like, okay, here's a couple pages building up to it, and then like one panel showing them training, and it doesn't matter anymore. We're skipping ahead. Like, it doesn't happen in the original source material, right? And obviously, like, and when you talk about shonen adaptations, you have to recognize that, like, yeah, Dragon Ball and all these other older ones, they came from a different time, and the way they adapted the material was very different than with Kimetsu. If Kimetsu came out then, it would probably be doing the same stuff, because it would have to be, there's a 24-volume manga that was super successful, so Jump's probably going to make it go on longer, because Death Note was kind of the example of them knowingly, or we know of them doing that. Dragon Ball, as far as I understand it. And it's just like, when you compare these different shows, you have to be aware of when they came out and how general like different attitudes resulted in their production and such. Right?
Yes.
So yeah, it's like, it's not, Kimetsu isn't that kind of thing. So of course it's going to be different, which is, and yeah, like, what character growth did Tanjiro have in that training montage? Like or did he need a lot? Like, it's probably just, it didn't need to be that long. And, but again, like, what were the two examples he showed? Deku, I'm pretty sure that didn't last longer than an episode.
Yeah, that was like, yeah.
And I don't fucking remember.
I feel like that's like exactly the same like pacing that Kimetsu did.
And, it was Deku showing he can put in the work to be a hero. Like, he didn't just, get handed his powers. He had to show that he, could do that basic, like, physical training to earn them, right? Which people seem to forget. But that's beside the point.
Like, what now that I'm thinking about that, MHA, it did that fast introduction of the training stuff. And then, like, and Kimetsu does that. But, like, Kimetsu later on has an entire training arc.
Oh no, tons of which in this would it have been adapted? Because I don't think
so. No, it wasn't adapted yet. It's after Mugen Train, right. And a large part of it is like because of the events of Mugen Train.
Because I do like the downtime in Kimetsu and even the training, and I like how there's so much time spent. The healing, there's so much time spent on those little things.
Yeah, it was really
like,
good.
I think it's good, right? So like, this is just him. Like, I understand why he's saying, because he hasn't finished the series, obviously, right? So I understand why he would think that, but it's like, well, okay, here's the series doing what you're at now, glad that it's not doing. So how are you going to? I guess the question is like, okay, how do you reconcile that when the anime gets to that point, and you have to go like, oh, here's a 5-episode training arc. It's good. But, I mean, it's obviously, I don't remember how long the material, probably not 5 episodes, but still, it's like,
See, this is like a thing I have like a really huge problem with, where people, like, obviously in this video, he's trying to make this really big, grandiose statement. I mean, okay, I won't say it's really big, grandiose, but it's a pretty big statement, about Kimetsu and, like, what it's doing for shonen as a genre, when it's,
right,
it's not
like,
genre.
just look at the thumbnail. I think it's the thumbnail of this video where it's got like Deku and Gon, and they got arrows, and it's like they fuse, you bunch them together and you get Tanjiro, but it's like,
no,
that's
just
I mean, we even
terrible.
said, like, apparently the influences of the author were, 2 of them were JoJo and Naruto.
Bleach, and JoJo were the top 3,
okay.
But
Gotcha.
the author also did say there's countless other series that inspired them.
Okay. Yeah, so, right, I don't know. I'm trying to think.
So, like, like he's making this really big statement, just based off of like season 1, or maybe this video was made even before season 1 was done. I'm not sure. I mean, it was probably almost close to done. He does show like the really big moment that people like, but
which was towards the ends of the show. So
yeah, it was like episode 18.
At least in the 19, something
or 16,
like that. Halfway through.
Yeah,
halfway through the second core, I think, give or take. But anyway.
But like, they're making these statements on these limited knowledge they have now of this current anime season going on, that people like do all the time before they can really like get the full picture of the effects of the show and like what it's doing for the magazine, and like as he's putting it, for shonen as a whole, which Kimetsu is doing something for battle shonen like now. Like, this was before Kimetsu blew up the way it did now, but like, he doesn't really have like that perspective right now, so it's just like really weird to make these statements, and he's not like reading the manga or anything, so it's just kind of like people get really caught up in this like seasonal watching and trying to he's trying to really explain why he thinks Kimetsu is something special, and instead
he's coming at it from the limited perspective of he watched the anime instead of like looking at it like, because I don't think we can really know when it first happens, right? I think it takes some time, right? Like,
so that's why you should wait before you say something like this,
right? Because guess what? The same thing happened when Jujutsu Kaisen aired, and you know what show's coming out, and the same thing's gonna happen again. How Chainsaw Man is redefining shonen. I can't wait to shoot myself with a chainsaw. Please, God, kill me. Yeah.
It's just like...
I don't know.
I forgot what I was saying now, but
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
We were talking
like
about training.
they just can't, see the effects of what Kimetsu's going to do.
Oh yeah, right. Or I guess to give
I had
one
a
example
whole
effect,
other place I wanted to take that to.
All right, I'll try. And
I mean, I guess it's just like this thing where like people, he obviously really likes Kimetsu, and like, he thinks he has to make it into this bigger thing. He has to make it into this bigger thing, in order to establish how good it is. When you don't really need to do that to praise something, but like I get it that it can be kind of hard to establish something is special, without kind of like comparing it against other things, because like to be special, it kind of needs to stand out in some kind of way compared to other things, I guess. But like it more so matters that it's like special to you, and kind of. So it's just like, he can't prove that it's like special in these particular ways that he's saying it is to Battle Series. And like, as we've proven, as we've talked, there's like other series that are doing a lot of these similar things. And like, even in his like speech, it's clear that like story wise, he can't really pinpoint Kimetsu as being really like super different. And like another thing I wanted to bring up too was like I mean that might be a tangent from this point. Did you have anything else to say about like this particular point?
Well, I was gonna ask, do you remember anything about the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood moment he brought up as an example? Because I don't remember that at all from the series when I read it.
Oh, the training thing?
Yeah, being dropped off. Because, like, again, I don't imagine that they spent very long on that.
I remember that in Brotherhood, but I don't think that's anime original. Like, I don't remember it being long. I don't know.
Right, yeah. So I was just like, if you're going to mention Shonen Training being long, why not show an example?
Yeah, he used two examples of something that wasn't that long. Like, it's not hard to find examples of something that's long, even if, like, it's still a point that's wrong overall, because there's plenty of examples of shonen training arcs that aren't that long, even from older series, like as you brought up Dragon Ball, JoJo Part 2.
JoJo's actually a good example, because both like Jonathan and Joseph train, but the adaptation of both parts 1 and 2 is exactly as long as the adaptation of just like a third of Kimetsu no Yaiba's entire story, right? And so they do train, but it just goes, but like it doesn't bog down the series a lot. Most of the time is spent on the fighting, right? But
another thing that I like. Go ahead.
Well, it was more to go back before he was talking about the training. Because he just said some weird things about Nezuko and how I guess she was in a coma because the writers didn't know what to do
I almost
with her.
forgot to bring that up. Yep.
And I'm like, for one, there's one main writer.
Yes. Okay, there.
The author of the manga, like the way he's wording it is kind of implying that, like I don't think he meant to do that.
I mean, I think he's too caught up in the idea of Ufotable doing Kimetsu. Like, I know he knows how it works, and I don't think he's that stupid. But I still think like, by him attributing this thing he really likes to Ufotable, he kind of accidentally kind of talks a certain way about it. But go ahead.
And well, obviously it's just like, well, she's a demon. She can't. Who doesn't eat normal people, right? So like, okay, she needs to rest longer. Like, it's establishing that she's different. Like, there's reasons in the story that's happening. It's not just the writer didn't know what to do with her. And it can be used as a source of like tension, like, oh no, Nezuko, this powerful fighter, isn't able to help because she's sleeping, or in this case it's like, well, okay, Tanjiro needs to do he's gonna have to train for a while to catch up to all these other demon slayers, so we don't need Nezuko in this story. In fact, like, so we can just have him do his thing alone, right? So it's just like, yeah, you can say that writing wise, but it's like, instead of just like, we don't know what to do with her, like, if the author wanted to do something with her, then they would have.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they have the power over their story. So, anyway,
another thing about that is, like, it does say something about Tanjiro, where he's like, he always doesn't want to involve her in the fights until, like, he's forced to. And, in one of the clips he shows, that I think that was, like, part of the lesson where Urokodaki was trying to tell him that, she's a demon now, so she can fight with you. You don't always need to protect her.
Right, where he was still in that mindset of, like, I lost my entire family, I don't want to lose the last person I have left, even though, like, yeah, she's perfectly capable of fighting for herself, right? But, yeah.
Yeah, like, there's just a lot of, like, character things there that I think he's missing.
Or at least not bringing up, right? Because, anyway, that's about, I think, all I have to say for that portion of the video.
Yeah, we can go ahead.
There's also a bit of hope in this show's future. Now, this is going to get a bit into spoiler territory, so I would advise you to skip this if that's something that matters to you. Now, I haven't read the manga yet, so maybe there's something in there that fixes this, but episode 7 of the anime is when they finally introduce us to the show's lead villain of sorts. For me, this was strange for a number of reasons. First, there are many unexplained circumstances to demonstrate how this villain demon went from being, our lead baddie by killing Tanjiro's family to just pleasantly living in a city far away. Alright. Second, it's odd that this encounter occurred so soon. The series is supposed to wrap up, or at least end on a narrative stopping point, after 2 cours, about 24 episodes, so I was expecting far more foreshadowing of this villain over the course of the next 10 episodes or so, as Tanjiro hunts other demons to find out the villain's location or similar. So for Tanjiro to just have found him now under these circumstances was quite interesting.
At the end he does say that it was actually kind of interesting that it turned out that way, but he also started that segment saying, like, maybe the manga fixes this. Like, he has unanswered questions about Muzan, understandable, but, like, it is an ongoing story, and, it's funny, like, I guess the thing is, like, because he's bringing it up as, like, that's kind of weird, when, like, yeah, I guess, like, the main character is just happening to bump into the main antagonist and his family, like, that's a different thing, right? Like, that's actually something I'm struggling to think of, like, have I seen that before? As far as, like, shonen series.
I've definitely seen, like, where the villain is, like, around early on, but,
right.
I casually bumping into them, not off the top of my head, but, like, I feel like there has to be something, but...
Right, like, but, at least he's not, like, making any broad... claims. Like, he's just like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, I don't, he doesn't understand Muzan's character because, like, you're not supposed to by this point in the story. Like,
yeah,
right. So that's understandable, right, that he'd think that, and like, yeah, he does say that, it went against his expectations, and, and like that was neat. Like, it's this part's fine, I think, overall.
I still feel like it's kind of like, did you need to say that? Because it's just like, like, for one, he's talking about it as, like, in the anime perspective of, like, oh, this is a 2-core thing, when, like, the manga's obviously continually going, and, if you look at it from the manga, the little mission that he just did with saving, that guy from that demon that was killing, like, innocent girls, that just finished, so that little, if you want to call it an arc, just finished, so it was really, like, that him seeing Muzan there transitioned into the, the next arc, so in that way, it wasn't, like,
it just randomly happens, right?
Yeah, and, like, it leads into the arc really well, where, like, he sees, Muzan, he's, Tanjiro thinks it's kind of weird that he's among people. Why is he among us?
Fuck you.
But, like,
Muzan is sus? Question mark. Sorry, you brought this upon yourself. Anyway.
But like, yeah, and he turns somebody into a demon, and from that person being turned into a demon, and like Tanjiro's kind of taking the same approach he did with Nezuko of like, he didn't eat anybody yet, so he's still gonna try and like defend them and kind of see if they can be good too. And from that what's her name? I'm forgetting her name. But like that one demon, like that female demon,
the doctor one?
Yeah, the doctor and
yes.
Her apprentice see that and recognize there's something different about Tanjiro, to where he's like trying to, like, he's still calling this demon a person in his speech. So like, it leads into him meeting them and another demon encounter. So it is like a transitional thing, but instead, he's looking at it like based on the anime and not the original source material. Which, like, it's fine that he's talking about the anime, but like, I still think it's weird to, like, it would be more ideal if he could at least consider it not as just, I don't know, just the anime.
I think I understand, because his question is answered. Just, I feel like the fact that there is a manga and that it is still ongoing and that it likely answers his question kind of like defeats the need to raise the question at all, right? Like,
yeah,
it'd be like, imagine he watched like 26 episodes of One Piece and it's like, we didn't find out what the One Piece is. Maybe the manga answers it later. It's like, of course it does, or it will. Like, I don't know, it's just a little silly.
And like, yeah, like, why was he one, like, I mean, no, it's fine to wonder. I mean, but it's like, why question it, in that way?
Yeah, like, and like, especially the way he says, like, or the way he says, maybe the manga fixes this, like, it's a problem.
Yeah,
like the series having mystery and things that it wants you, like, here's the fucking main antagonist with the human family. Why is that? Here's an interesting question you want that you want answered. A reason to keep. Like, that was, I'm pretty sure that was like a big end of chapter thing. Like, oh, it's fucking Muzan, right? Like, that's gonna make people like want the next chapter. That's just how Jump is formatted, right? Like, it makes sense as to why it happens, and it's like, it's not a problem that needs to be, like, the way when he says fix, that implies like it's a problem, and it's the opposite of a problem.
Okay, so like, in this entire video, he has this problem of thinking like, oh, a lot of, like, he kind of thinks shonen do these, there's a generic shonen, or like they do these things that are like painfully shonen, but like, here he is kind of thinking it's a negative to meet the antagonist this early, because he has it in his head that battle shonen don't typically do that.
Yeah, that's the painfully shonen thing, is to gradually build up to the final antagonist, right? So yeah.
And there's plenty of series where that that doesn't happen, like like JoJo with had Dio around in part 1, like very early on, and like there's just I don't know, there's just so many, and like in Dai's Great Adventure, what the fuck is his name, I guess he turns out to not really be like the main guy,
Hadlar,
right?
is just like the lieutenant. What is the main antagonist's name?
I think he's just called like the Demon Lord or something. I don't think he has a name.
No, he has
or
a
maybe
name.
It wasn't revealed in what I watched.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure I should know it, but I don't remember it. Right, and like Kaguya doesn't come in until, or even mentioned until, partway through the Ninja War. Yobak only comes in during the last arc, even though he has a presence through Zangetsu. Right, like, series are going to do it differently. One Piece, we don't even know who the main final antagonist is going to be. Like, we have a couple major suspicions.
Chapters,
it's over 1,000 chapters long, and we're like, is it going to be Blackbeard? Is it going to be Akainu? Is it going to be this new character who is just introduced, like,
that'd be
around
fucking crazy
mark?
if it was, like, a new character. That, like, and it's still a possibility, too, which is, like, crazy.
And Im is still a pretty new character, all things considered, like, in the scope of the story. But it's just, like, right, like, we don't even know with One Piece. It's, like, once I go, like, yeah, you're right, it's 1,000 chapters long. How the fuck? Right,
so, like, about this point, it's just, like, again, it's another thing where there's, like, so much variance that people don't realize.
Right, because like when I try to think of like, okay, shonen, what when people just generally say shonen, my go-to, like, I don't just bring up the big three because I like them. I bring them up because it's like I feel like that's what people are thinking about, because they're just so the big three and Dragon Ball, like the big three and Dragon Ball, like make up such a dominant portion of the conversation that it's like, it's hard not to think about them, and so I just tend to bring them up first because like that's what I feel like people are going to be thinking about. Just because of how much of a presence like Naruto is still talked about, like regardless of Boruto, like people still talk about Naruto all the time. One Piece is still ongoing. Dragon Ball is has stuff going on, and it's still like Bleach is a bit
even
less
Bleach,
so compared to them.
I mean, even
still,
Bleach, I would still say with like Jujutsu Kaisen, people would
we're going to bring up Bleach, and it's supposed to be getting its last arc adapted, which I'm sure will heighten the conversation amount even more. Right, so it's hard not to think about this series, and it like when those series don't necessarily build up to the main antagonist throughout the whole thing, then I mean it's definitely a thing that happens. Like in fact, that's probably but it's I don't know, it's not too big of a deal, all things considered.
I also think it with him, like, why is Muzan with these people? What's his deal? He just earlier, like, he knows the idea of like, we don't get all the details about the demon until they die or until the their final moments in the confrontation and stuff. So like, why would you have Muzan's details right here? Yeah, we can go ahead.
Spoiler section over. You can come back now. Again, a lot of this series is just tightening up the popular tropes of the genre and presenting them in a refined form, which I don't think would have worked as well if it were not for Ufotable at the helm. Now, I was worried about this production going into it, because while Ufotable has made some of my favorite anime of all time, and certainly has some of the best produced from an animation standpoint, unless it has something to do with Type Moon like Fate or Garden of Sinners, then it has otherwise been fairly unremarkable. I still remember being hyped as hell for God Eater a few years back, only for it to become a series that most of us have now forgotten about. That's a thing. I think Ufotable just needed some time to figure out some styles that worked. In this case, Demon Slayer is far more style than substance. Now, usually, what I just said, that phrase gets used in a negative light. It's meant to highlight the lack of a good story. However, as I have hopefully showcased, that's not necessarily the case here. There is a story, and for what it is well written and engaging, but if you are looking specifically for something unique that hasn't been done before, then yeah, you might want to take a gander elsewhere. That being said, though, Demon Slayer is more of a refinement of the narrative rather than an attempt at reinventing the wheel, and it is noteworthy for just how well it accomplishes that. But that is just up to present day and what we have seen so far. There's still quite a bit to go, and this has only been my first reaction to the series. Maybe the story will surprise us and turn into something quite different from what I am expecting. Time will tell.
All right. So with that point, I want to say it's kind of like he kind of tries to say that it's entirely the adaptation and like decisions Ufotable was doing with like how it looks and stuff, and like but like, so if it's like entirely in regards to the adaptation and how it looks, yet even in the same statement he kind of says it's refining things narratively, which is like kind of a contradiction to what he was saying.
Right, like, no, he was I felt like he was definitely trying to talk about why Kimetsu was, like, different or unique in some ways compared to the other shonen things, but then he goes back on that and says, oh, no, it's not doing anything new, it's just refining, and it's like, what? Then why did you say, like, oh, he doesn't want to be the strongest? Because that definitely calls attention to, like, I would say, Dragon Ball, like, Naruto, One Piece,
like, where he's definitely talking about writing for most of the video, and narrative and story.
Right, and, right, well, and I guess another error I think he makes is the way he talks about Ufotable as some kind of, like, monolith, rather than, like, a bunch
The
of people
specific
who are
staff,
working together.
who are
like,
working on things.
there are different directors. There are different like animation there's different staff members working on different shows, right? So maybe maybe the show has the same director as some of the Fate stuff he likes, or maybe it doesn't. Like what is, there's something, right? There's probably a reason for it, right? And maybe it's or in this case, like God Eater was like a game thing. Maybe there was some things from the staff of the game, and they had directed or mandated for some things that didn't work out. I don't know. Production is a long, complicated process, and I just don't like the way he tries to reduce it to just the name of a studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's people who worked on this show, right?
I feel like for someone who's been in the community for such a long time and who's like watched so many things and has talked for so long, that's a pretty like a notable error to make at this point. In,
right,
like,
that would be like
career.
saying like, hold on, what's a good example? Like, how could the studio that made Hajime no Ippo, Madhouse, like do this ugly show when Ippo looks so good? It's like, come on, like, I don't know, like just assuming that every studio show is going to be the same when that's just not true. Like A1 shows, like they have lots of different stuff going on because they have different people working on it. Some shows are more homogenous, right? In some ways, like Shaft, we say Shaft style because of the way they edit and do certain cuts and presentations and reuse certain when I remember in Monogatari, there's like a long shot or a long distance shots, I don't know, film where like the characters are walking and the sunset is like going through the buildings, and that there's a shot like that in Madoka, right? Like there's just similar little bits, right? It varies. So like, okay, and he's saying, well, this is different, but it's like, okay, why is that different? Like, who's working on these shows, right? Like, who's working on Fate and Kaoru no Kyokai that wasn't working on God Eater? Were they working on Kimetsu? Like, who's, is there, like, find production interviews. It's such a popular anime. I would be shocked if there was no staff talking about the production of the show, right? And yeah, and I just like, he's trying to say style is versus substance, or it's style above substance as like a positive thing, when like I do like the manga is like, I mean, I do think it like looks good visually, right? So he's like I don't know, is he? I don't know. Well, I guess he wasn't specifically. He's just not talking about the manga because he hasn't read it, I guess. But it's like
I mean, yeah, that's fine. But like
for a second, I was kind of wondering if he was like. Because UFO Tape was doing an adaptation. I feel like usually when people talk about like the studio and like, oh, it's better than the manga, that kind of thing. Maybe that's just where my mindset is. Because I think about it, I don't think he did that. But I don't know. It's just a thought I had, and I was like, I couldn't shake it quite. But anyway, go ahead.
It's really weird how he arrives on that final statement that wasn't what he was focusing on throughout the video, and it's hard to even say what he thinks is particular to Kimetsu that is refining shonen, when the source material of shonen is manga. So it's just like an anime being really good, it kind of doesn't reflect on what the manga series are going to do. I will say that Kimetsu's anime being really good, it does influence other shonen adaptions, I would say, because there is totally obviously a trend with Jujutsu Kaisen and Kimetsu to where other least, shonen, new shonen will definitely take note. Like other shonen adaptations will take note, but the series with themselves isn't necessarily going to refine itself from the anime. It's just a really weird point to make. And there is better points you can make now about Kimetsu's influence on Jump and adaptations now that the manga's over. it's blowing up and being the biggest media property in Japan right now. The movie was really lucrative. There's more you can say about it now, but like
Right,
even
like, I
what's
think
happening now
yeah.
doesn't back up like how he's describing like what he thinks is particular to Kimetsu. So but go ahead.
Right, well, because, like, I think, especially with, like, how Jujutsu Kaisen is kind of, like, replicating what Kimetsu did, where, okay, here's a fucking phenomenal-looking anime adaptation, and let's watch the manga sales explode, right? It's not as extreme as Kimetsu, but the fact that, like, here's lightning striking twice. Like, okay, there's something going on here, right? And I'm really curious as to what'll happen with Chainsaw Man, because, relatively speaking, it was more of a niche title when it did run in Jump. Like, it sold well, but not, like, as well, for sure. But and it's getting...
I wouldn't call it a niche title in Jump. I think that's a little... I wouldn't say it's, like, on the level of some other stuff, but, I wouldn't say niche.
Okay, yeah, sure, but, that's fair. But, like, I don't know, well, because apparently, like, animators were flocking to the project when it was announced, or when, like, people want to work on this show. So I feel like that's a little reason to be a little hopeful regarding visuals, because, if, like, talented animators want to work on this, then maybe it's going to look fucking good, right? And so I'm kind of curious about how that will kind of continue this trend, or, or how it will relate to the trend, so to speak, because I definitely, especially, like, Jump is changing, right? Because, like, they're allowing these series to end at a certain point, rather than trying to push them to go on forever.
Yeah.
Their animated adaptations aren't being these, like, long-running shows that just go on and on and on. Right? Like, even Black Clover ended, and or the anime, and I'm sure it'll come back at some point. But I do wonder, like, in what, like, is it gonna keep going as it was, or I don't know. We live in a pretty interesting time, so I understand being interested in it, but it's like, yeah, the ending of the video doesn't necessarily follow what came before it. And especially, like, when you look at, like, the thumbnail again, it's like, okay, refining shonen. Here's MHA. Here's Hunter x Hunter. How the fuck did Kimetsu no Yaiba refine either of these two titles that are exceptionally well received critically?
And also, like, MHA is just too close to, like Kimetsu didn't start at the same time as, like, MHA, but, like, it's still, like, too close for, like, Kimetsu to really have, like, a lot to do with what MHA was doing and stuff. It's just, like, they're not really related. And, like, again, we brought up, like, things the author really likes, and there's probably more to it if you looked into it. Like, the author has his they have their own history,
right, and like, yeah, I don't know how the series relate, like, how his video relates to either of those series, because he brings up Hunter x Hunter
Gon is green and Deku is green and Tanjiro has green clothes.
You got it. You nail on the head. Right. But it's like he doesn't bring up a lot of specific examples, and so, like, Gon doesn't want to be the strongest. I guess Hunter x Hunter does have some long training, all things considered. But it also has some, like, mechanics that are really important to know with Nen. But it's like, I don't know. It's just like it just the video is just weird, and it's kind of a little all over the place. Yeah, it's it's far from, like, the worst video that we've talked about on the EWB, and we did want to pick it as an example of, like, how you can still be positive, but still, like, not necessarily have good points, right? Because, like, overall it's positive. You said some perfectly fine thing about Kimetsu, but I do think that I've always felt, or maybe not always, but I do feel like if you can't talk positively about something without throwing other things under the bus, then maybe you're not qualified to talk about something positively. And I do understand, like, it is harder. I do understand that, but, like, it's not impossible. And, I would hope that people start doing better, right? Because, here's a video that's just like, again, it's just like, yep, I feel like I've watched this same kind of video before, where it's just like,
yeah,
it just felt a little generic, right? It's very typical. And more so than Kimetsu no Yaiba is. or basically any shonen I've read. But anyway, there's me being toxic again.
Yeah. But what was I gonna say? I don't remember. I forget.
Unfortunate. Any more closing thoughts on the video? Because it sounds like we're about done.
I mean, yeah. It's just like a lot of typical things that people say. You know, a lot of bad perspective.
No, yeah, it very much leans into that. Yeah, this is everything I've seen, and I know everything. Therefore, I'm going to comment as though I know everything. But you know, like I don't know, if I'm gonna say, man, there's so many shonen that I haven't read, then maybe other people should be more knowing about the shonen series they haven't read. Because I feel like I've read a lot, but also I feel like I haven't read very many at all.
I mean, I feel like when somebody's like truly like at least somewhat knowledgeable about like a particular like demographic or like genre or like magazine,
it would
they'll
show,
be able
right?
to recognize when like, you know, you just will never have like you will never have read everything and like have all the perspective, and like you're better able to see the gaps in your knowledge to kind of avoid certain things. And like a lot of people you know, they don't recognize that as much to stop them from saying things like what this video does.
Yeah, and I guess that just about sums it up. Like, you know, do research. Like, it's out there. It's free. It's literally free. You just need to know where to look. Ask me. Send me DMs, please. Like, hey, where did you know this thing? Like, you know, we'll have some sources. Like, I know more stuff. I've looked at interviews. Like, it's out there. Find it, please. But anyway, I guess that about covers it. So. All right, thank you for listening, and another EWB, another video that will be way more, get way more views than our weeklies, even though at least the last weekly we recorded was fucking amazing. But watch the weeklies.
I mean, that's not
please.
last weekly by the time this one comes out, because
there's
still
no,
a whole
definitely
other
not.
EWB
Yeah,
that
it was episode 7.
one.
There, it's specifically the weekly episode 7 was fucking great. Go back and watch it if you didn't, because holy shit. Anyway, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
Give us money on Patreon, please.
Yeah.